in terms of what they didn't say. So I can quote them. No one said it. Hour and a half, 3 speakers, Harvard Law, Harvard Business, Harvard undergrad, 3 experts. Not once did they mention the Uyghurs. Not once. And it's like my classmate Karen Baum Gordon has written a book talking about the silence of the New York Times during the Holocaust. What is up with this, Mr. Chairman?
Well, it's interesting. When it comes from Wall Street, you can understand why it's happening because, of course, they want to continue to make money in China and don't want to be bothered with the pesky genocide that's underway. It's a pure profit motive. When it comes from academia, the same group that is very into social justice, it's more inexplicable. But there is a profit motive when it comes to universities. Chinese students are very lucrative for universities. University administrators are loath to criticize the Chinese Communist Party. We've seen a lot of donations coming to China. We've seen the failure of various academic institutions to comply with Section 117 Alpha of the Higher Education Act, which requires you to disclose donations over $250,000. The Trump administration started to enforce that and discovered billions and billions of dollars of unreported donations. So the fact is, for some of the same reasons that Wall Street is loath and Hollywood is loath to criticize the CCP, academia is in the same position. It's as if we're so afraid of upsetting Xi Jinping, we are unwilling to tell the truth. And I think this is shameful, particularly as we recognize the anniversary, as we did a few days ago, of the Tiananmen Square massacre. There's a joke an old friend from China told me, Hugh, which is that under the Chinese Communist Party, the future is very predictable, but it's hard to know what's going to happen in the past. And the fact is the CCP is trying to erase both the present in Xinjiang and the past in Tiananmen. You're not even allowed to refer to it. You can't refer to the date 6/4 without being censored. Even clever coded ways to refer to Tiananmen get censored, like 64 or 8 squared, or even clever May 35th. So we need to understand who we're up against here, a techno-totalitarian regime that wants to coerce us and silence us.
I like that, techno-totalitarian regime. Also uncovered by the panel, because they didn't talk about it, I can quote them. They said nothing about 10 for Taiwan. A certain person who may have been on that panel and may not have been said you scare them because you called China an existential threat. You, Mike Gallagher, were the only name that came out. You are the existential threat, not China. But not one of them mentioned the 10 for Taiwan, which came out before the panel came out, and I believe is bipartisan, correct? Everybody signed on?
It went by voice vote, so it was incredibly bipartisan. It was a bipartisan process, and the goal of our recommendations was to preserve peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. Our message is simple. It's to Xi Jinping and to say, do not try and take Taiwan by force. We're trying to restore deterrence. So if the project of peace is scary to the panelists, then I hesitate to think what the project of war, which is the project that Xi Jinping is actually engaged in right now, does to their delicate sensibilities. As for the existential comment, Hugh, if you examine what Xi Jinping says, particularly when he's talking to fellow CCP members and not to a Western audience, or sending someone to Davos to really beguile some of our captains of industry, he talks about it in existential terms. He talks about the inevitable demise of the capitalist system led by the United States. He blasted the United States after we had the temerity to shoot down the Chinese spy balloon, accusing us of all-around encirclement and containment. So we need to start listening to what these people say, Putin, Xi Jinping, the Ayatollahs, and not sort of foist our Western sensibilities on to these regimes. That's how deterrence failed in Ukraine. If we apply the same methodology, the same mirror imaging to the Indo-Pacific, we're going to stumble into a war for which we're ill-prepared. And 10 for Taiwan was all about preparing us before it's too late.
Now, Mr. Chairman, this week the Chinese ran a ship 90 degrees across the bow of our destroyer and a Canadian destroyer doing a freedom of navigation transit. My answer to that would be to basically have a parade of American ships never stopping going through that strait. What are they doing? Do they want a confrontation, in your opinion? They being the Chinese Communist Party. That's the video. We're showing it right now for people watching on the Salem News Channel. That is a dangerous maneuver.
I think this was designed to embarrass us or bully us and coerce us. Because if you remember the context, Hugh, this was about the same time that our Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was asking for a meeting with the Chinese defense minister, who, by the way, is a sanctioned official at the Shangri-La summit in Singapore. This is part of a broader pattern we're seeing from the Biden administration, which is there's this outreach going on, and they're sort of chasing Chinese officials around the world in an attempt to meet with them, to shake their hands. And this sanctioned Chinese official refused Secretary Austin's request, refused to meet, insulted us, and this added insult to that injury with this provocation in the Strait. And so I think it was all part of an effort to make us look weak on the world stage, to bully us, to get us to back down. And I think the more we sort of pursue this naive outreach or diplomacy unconnected from a credible military deterrent threat, the weaker our position will be. I have no problem with talking, but diplomacy must be backed by the credible threat of military force. And so the best thing we can do, to your point, Hugh, is to not only start building more ships and surging them west of the international dateline, but putting in place anti-ship missiles that are capable of sinking Chinese ships should they launch a cross-strait invasion.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've got here Winston Churchill's The World Crisis, Volume 1, 1911 and 1914. I'll be spending many, many months with Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, talking about this book because it sort of is about the pre-war period when Germany embarked upon the naval law 1, 2, 3, and 4. They kept building a blue water fleet. And England kind of responded poorly, but no one figured out the signals. I just saw the debt limit bill. I think it was a win for Kevin McCarthy, but it's only a 3% hike. Ken Calvert told me yesterday they got to go into the budget and rearrange it in detail. We have to reconfigure what we've got to face China. Do you think that's going to happen?
I think we have an opportunity to do a variety of creative things. One option, which I'm exploring right now, Hugh, is that for the last 5 years, at least $25 billion every year that we've appropriated for defense has gone unspent. So you're talking over $100 billion. Think about what you could buy with that. It goes into abeyance for 5 years, and then it gets returned to the Treasury. So with flexibility over the course of the 5-year defense plan, you could take that money, which again has already been appropriated, it doesn't count against future deals, and you can apply it to a few key things: hard power, critical munitions, long-range precision fires, ships and shipyards, and the facilitization necessary to build a bigger Navy, and all the logistics you need in the Indo-Pacific, hardening of runways, base facilities, all the connectors, ship-to-shore movements. Those 3 priority areas, even if we were able just to do that $10 billion a year over the course of 5 years, I believe that could really restore deterrence and possibly prevent World War III. And also, I think you could bring the Freedom Caucus along to that, because again, you're talking about money that's already been appropriated. So it's time to get creative because the warning signs are flashing red.
Wow. I didn't know. So it's $100 billion potentially. We got 5 seconds. $100 billion out there unspent?
It's been approximately $25 billion a year for 4 to 5 years, so over $100 billion.
Buys a lot of long-range missiles and some ships and a shipyard or two. Congressman Mike Gallagher, chairman of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, who scares Harvard academics, and winning doesn't matter in Wisconsin. Mike Gallagher, thank you. Be well.